everybody, how's it going? Welcome to What is Fabrizio Drinking? Inking today. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. It's been a month or so since I streamed, so I'm a little rusty. If things go sideways, just yell and let me know. Like hot coffee that will burn your mouth. Anyway, I am Fabrizio Ale. I'm a comic book creator. If you're new to me or the channel, I have a comic book called Horace H. Hoover. I have 3 issues of a 5-issue miniseries out currently, available at horacehoover.com, and the collected of the first 3 issues on amazon.com. Just search Horace Hoover, and it'll pop up. And if you do search Horace Hoover and something else pops up, let me know, and my lawyers, they're going to be on that quickly. So anyway, today I'm actually just going to be doing some drawing, I don't want to say a random drawing, but it's just a fantasy illustration that I did. And it's just something to change up the comic book stuff. So I'm going to be doing some actual old school pen and ink stuff. And this is the pencils currently. What I do is I scan these in, and then I print out blue lines. So blue lines are a lot harder to see, but just so you know what I'm going to be doing, sort of have like this troll monster guy and a knight on top with some very stylized clouds in the back. Any questions, comments, let me know. If not, I'm just going to kind of dig in and start inking. How about background music? I know some people don't like it, but I might do some background music. Very low. So I have 2 size nibs. I'm totally blanking. Hunt 105? I am blanking on the size of these. These are the 2 standard ones that I've been using for a billion years. 107? I can't remember. I'll post a link or a description later on. So I'm gonna this is gonna take quite a bit of time. I'm only gonna be streaming for an hour, but I'll get some basic stuff in, and then we'll see how it goes. I've been wanting to do more fantasy stuff, just something a little different than the Horace H. Hoover, because, you know, it's how you get better, is changing the subject matter, changing the style, changing certain variables of the art, and then, you know what, I need a piece of scratch paper, 1 second. Yeah, so something like this, you know, you might see people use rapidograph. Wow, I dated myself with that reference. Nobody uses a rapidograph anymore, really. It's just a technical pen. People would use microns now, or something like that. But a very long time ago, when I used to do this quite a bit more, instead of using a brush, it would be a technical pen, or this. They both have really distinct advantages and disadvantages. Rapidographs, first of all, keeping them flowing and not clogging is one of the most difficult things to do, one of the most tedious, obnoxious things but at the time, it was really the only option. And if you can't hear me, let me know. But at the time, it was really the only option. Outside of using traditional pen and ink. And, why would you use a rapidograph instead of traditional pen and ink? You don't have to dip it in the well. Really, that was primarily why you would use it. But you also didn't get any line variation. So even though these tips are specific width, you can still get quite a bit of variation. With a technical pen, you get virtually none. Not any you can really see with your eye. I mean, if you wanted to bend the tip, you could get some sort of variation, but not anything that looks natural. So sometimes it's nice just to go back and try some other tools. Some different subject matter and see what happens. I've always found that pen and ink pros would be texture. It's, with a brush, you really have to sort of hold back most of the time so you don't go the full width of the brush. So it has such a variation that a lot of times you're actually holding back more than going sort of like pushing pressure down. Whereas with a pen, it's the opposite. You don't have to hold back really, because you only can get so large. I did an illustration recently for an Edgar Allan Poe story, which is sort of on the down low currently. But that was one of those situations where I went back and forth on whether or not I'm going to use a brush or a pen. And what I do is, that's why I like Blue Line. What I'll do is I'll actually print out a lower resolution version on sort of crappier ink paper and just do some tests. And what I'll do is I'll pick certain spots of the illustration and I'll see basically how it handles. And then I'll make my decision there whether or not I want to use a brush or a pen. For that, I ended up going with a brush. And the other unfortunate con is, hey Yang, how's it going? Afternoon. The other con for the pen versus the brush is the ink kind of sits on the page with a pen, as opposed to a brush, it immediately gets absorbed, so you're far, far less likely to smear with a brush than a pen. If you're careful, it's not a problem, but if you're working quickly, really jumping around the page, you can run into problems. The other reason I wanted to do some fantasy stuff, I sort of my next story after the five issue miniseries with Horace Hoover, which I won't be stopping completely, but I'll kind of be jumping back and forth a little bit. There is another story I've been working on after that, and it's definitely more fantasy, totally different sort of setting, and I really want to work up to that. I think it's a bad idea as an artist to say, okay, I've been drawing 1920s New York, occult detective, type stuff and then jump into, a traditional fantasy setting. Like each of those really need its own language. So I like to do as many preliminary drawings and studies. Looking good, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Yang has a D&D module, Empire of the Undying Sun, and I saw some of the illustrations, and I thought they were fantastic. So this is the kind of stuff that I kind of did before I did comics. Or maybe the same time. I don't know. There's a lot of overlap with that stuff, but I was doing a lot of fantasy type pen and ink stuff. So it's nice to just get back to it a little bit. His hand could have been more gnarly for like a troll, but the other thing about pen and ink too is you really have to just settle into the idea that you're just making progress so slowly compared to a brush that if you hit a few wrong lines, don't worry about it. I always think about this like calculation of lines on the page, and at a certain point, okay, you know what, this little batch of strokes I put down, they didn't really look good. They were too close together, too far apart, some reason that they were bad. When all is said and done, you might have 10,000 strokes on the page. Those 15 will be irrelevant and totally inconsequential. So it's even more so with a pen and ink drawing as opposed to a brush, just because, there's just far, far more lines on the page. So I just keep going until the very end, and then I kind of sit back and say, okay, that was a success or not, or this area was good or not. But when I was very young, I used to bail far too quickly on drawings, and I kind of regret it, because you don't really learn from starting, you usually learn from finishing things. But sometimes you have to learn the hard way. I don't want to get too caught up on one area. There's also a bunch of different ways to really handle the pen and ink. You kind of set up a specific language per drawing. I'll use Bernie Wrightson as an example. If you look, you'll see some drawings, every stroke is at a diagonal across the entire thing. And then some, there's hatching horizontally and diagonally, and some, have other aspects. But you kind of have to set up whatever language you're going to be using, and you got to stick with it. So for this, I'm not going to do any cross hatching. I'm just going to be doing hatching. That's the only like rule that I've set up. Because if what happens is if I start working on this and 80% of it is just hatching, and then at the very end I do some cross hatching, it will look terrible. It'll look out of place. It won't fit with the rest of the drawing, and not to be too hyperbolic, but it'll ruin the drawing. There's really no chance of redeeming the drawing at that point. So pick a language and stick with it. I mean, who doesn't love a giant troll, right? So something I am doing, again, this is part of the language that I've chosen, is I don't want to use the word outline, but I am doing some contour lines, which, depending on the kind of drawing you're doing, that might be one of those things that just doesn't happen. You know, you might not do any lines, any contour lines at all. It's all just value against each other. And that's generally quite a bit harder to do. So for these kind of drawings, what I like to do is I like to do some contour lines so I know where I'm at. And then I keep them open so I have like these lost edges, and then I'll try to do shading next to it so that line essentially gets incorporated into the hatching of whatever's next to it. So for this guy, there will be hatching right next to his muscle there, so this contour line will sort of be absorbed into that hatching patch group. What's this guy's name? I have no idea. This was just a fun drawing I did. So, I don't know. He's definitely, this isn't part of the Horace story, and it's actually not even part of the next story I want to do. This was just a particular type of setting that I wanted to play around in. It looks like this size pen is fine. I had a smaller one ready, but I really think I can do this just with this larger pen. Trying to think of Hunt 102. Yeah, that's what it is. Was it 105, 107? I think this is a 102. And these tips are, I can't remember the name, but they're G something. They're really cheap. I mean, I'll say cost effective, or they're like from a Chinese company, and I had my doubts. I'm like, oh, I'll test them out. I mean, I have boxes of nibs, boxes and boxes of them. So I'm constantly kind of, collecting things, collecting art supplies, and they're fantastic. They're really nice. A lot of nibs, you need to kind of work with them. They need to get broken in before they really start to bend the way you need them to. So, highly recommend it. Called G something. If you Google like pen nib, jeez, I can't think of the name of it. But I bought a bunch of these, and they've been fantastic. Soy del Salvador. Hello, how's it going? Extargo, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Did you get them on Amazon? I'm almost positive I did. I'll dig them out. I can't remember offhand. What did I read recently? Trying to think. Nothing great. I don't wanna. I bought a few comics that I was pretty disappointed in, but kind of not worth going over. I did get the Sin City. You might even be able to see it in the background. The Sin City Artist Edition, which is incredible. Actually, that was a gift, and it's amazing. Artist editions are pretty expensive, and it's hard not to buy them all. If you're an artist or just a fan, I mean, they're just so interesting. But you learn a ton once you can see, what somebody is whiting out. Where they're changing their mind, where they're modifying things on the fly. It's really informative. You have Frank Miller doing his definitely magnum opus, I would say. And there's not a ton of whiteout, but whenever you see certain drawings, there's always that in the back of your head. Oh, is that whiteout on top of a solid black background, or did he, keep those areas white when he was drawing? All that stuff is really important to know. about a small box of nibs a few months ago, but I can never tell what's good on Amazon. Yeah, I'll make sure I dig them out. I bought, and I totally don't know the names of these nibs, but I had read an article about Bernie Wrightson years and years ago, and it was about his tools, and he mentioned the very particular kind of, was it an interview? Maybe it wasn't an article, but I remember him giving the name of the nibs he used, and I'm like, oh, I've got to track these down and buy them. And I did. It was actually kind of difficult to find. They're a French company, and I bought like 100 of these things because I was afraid that, once I bought them, I might love them and then never find them again. So I bought quite a few. Well, anyway, I got them in the mail. They didn't really look any different than any other nib that I'd ever used, except the metal had like color variation on it, which was kind of odd. At first I thought it was the sort of the coating that they sometimes put on nibs that you have to clean off or burn off or something like that, which was kind of a pain in the butt, but I'm like, okay, that's fine, I'll do that. I probably shouldn't have done that side of his muscle, but that's fine. Anyway, I could not get this coating off of the nib. I tried every trick in the book. Couldn't do it. And I have yet to successfully use any of the nibs that I bought that Bernie Wrightson used. Because surely, as soon as I start using that nib, I become Bernie Wrightson. Pretty sure that's how that works. Like anodized aluminum. Maybe it looks like, that color, like that weird kind of rainbowy color that soap will get sometimes. That's the best way I could describe it. I should dig them out next time and show you, but I have yet to be able to get them to work. So my theory is Bernie Wrightson sabotaged the manufacturing plant, or wherever they're manufactured, so nobody could ever recreate the kind of illustrations he did on Frankenstein. Or at least that's what I like to think. Yeah, that's it. Like it's been heated. Yep. Yeah, but like I said, I could not, no matter what I did. So I accidentally did a little bit of cross-hatching there. I didn't mean to go that far over. I don't think that'll be a problem, because that's going to be pretty dark. Oh, I did watch the new Deadpool movie, and I hope nobody gets offended by this, but I thought it was the dumbest movie I'd ever seen in my life, and that's saying something. I just thought it was utterly unfunny, uninteresting. And I got all the cameos. It's not like I didn't understand those few things that were supposed to be the crux of the movie, apparently. Yeah, I just thought it was probably the dumbest. I used to think Marvel humor was bad, but this Deadpool humor for the third one, I I know it sounds kind of crazy. I liked the first Deadpool. I thought it really had heart, and I thought the jokes for the most part landed. By the time you get to the second Deadpool, they either rehash jokes from the first, or it just didn't work for me at all. And this last one, I thought it was just, I don't know. Yeah, I know dumb is the point, but man, I don't know. I like dumb humor. Like, I liked the first Deadpool. I thought it was different. Maybe I wasn't in the right mood. Maybe if I had been in the theater. I get that sometimes that's what it is. But man, I was a little annoyed. Not annoyed, but... Oh, and the other thing too is you can't have a fight scene or multiple fight scenes with two characters that can not die and have me care about it. I don't understand why you would do that. Maybe the first fight scene, because you see some cool back and forth, maybe. But multiple fight scenes between Logan and Deadpool, and we know that they can't die, virtually. Like, there were no stakes. It wasn't even low stakes. It was 0 stakes. Yeah, see, I smudged his hand there a bit. Anyway, I was excited to see it, and then that excitement waned pretty quickly. Wow, I'm really just focused in on this arm, huh? A little bit of the head, at least. Pens are much easier to control than a brush, I will say that. That's why it's like... If you play guitar, and you're always playing an acoustic guitar, and then you pick up an electric, it's fun because strings are lighter, it's just the neck's thinner, it's just an easier instrument to play, to some degree. That's the best way I can describe going from a brush to pen. Okay. So this is going to be sort of the first layer. And then I would sort of step back and then darken things. So obviously, like right under his armpit, this is going to be really, really dark. So I'll go through now and I'll just put the first pass of it. And then once everything else is done, or once I've done sort of like the first pass on everything, then I'll go back in and start to do the darkest point, and then I'll jump around to the next darkest point and all the way up and keep darkening some things, you know, and that's where you sort of pick up really the form is from that variation in value. I was, after Deadpool, just kind of flipping through the channels, and this is going to sound terrible, and this is my hot take, and if somebody wants to argue with me on this, I will totally argue on Twitter. But You Got Mail was on, and I watched her for a few minutes out of just pure nostalgia for the AOL stuff, because I haven't seen this movie probably since it came out. And I'm starting to think that sort of like mid-level rom-coms of the 90s were better movies than most big-budget summer tentpole movies today. Better acted, actually funnier. Yeah, I think that's how... and that's not to say that rom-coms are great. It means that I think that's how low my view of movies is, of the current state of movies, is that an old rom-com from the 90s I actually think is better in a lot of ways than the latest movie at the theater. Probably shouldn't have done that. I'll have to save. I should have saved that point just for the when I do like the second pass, but oh well. So trolls are gonna have kind of gross skin, and I think like warts and all manner of like little carbuncles and whatnot. So what seems like random dots or slashes or circles is supposed to give the impression, at least, of that kind of stuff on skin. Zhao, do you wipe off? Thanks for popping in, by the way. Do you wipe off or rinse your nib while working, or just keep inking it up? It depends. I usually can tell if it's getting a little crusty. Right now, I could wipe it off, but it's been working fine. So if I feel that it starts getting tough to work with, it might be getting there pretty quickly though. But usually you can go a ways without having to do that. Yeah, I usually don't stream that long where I need to do that. That's sort of my cutoff point. So for like a brush, 45 minutes in and your brush is going to start to get gunked up. So that's why I limit streaming to like 45 minutes to an hour, because I don't want to have to I don't want to have to go get water and dip it in and all that. But thanks for popping in. Coco Shuko Papashango? I hope I got that right. That looks cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for popping in. Thank you. I'm just getting into inking and couldn't find the answer anywhere. Yeah, I mean, just kind of be observant. I think that's the best way to go about it. And if you find it's getting more difficult to get a thin line, or just anything that just changes, then you might as well clean it off. But again, you should be able to ink a fair amount of time before you have to do that. What self-respecting troll doesn't have a loincloth? It is funny that trolls are pretty modest in that way. They're like, oh, I'm a troll. I would go out and slaughter a village, but I don't have my loincloth on. I kept on meaning to clean my loincloth, but I just haven't had a chance, so I guess I'll have to stay home today. Yeah, so right now this is getting a little thicker than I would like. So I'm actually going to switch to this. Now this might be too thin, so we'll see. But I'm just doing... It's thinner, but it's not so thin that it is a problem. So he's going to be the most fun to do. I'm kind of leaving him for the end, just because there's not a lot of detail right now. I just have a little bit of the armor, kind of impression, pose, sword. Like filling in on those little details is fun, so it's nice to leave them a little vague until you actually ink. Yeah, I use the blue line. I mean, I'm not really staying too close to it, you know, but it lets me know not to go too far in one direction and mess something up. Like this loincloth, you know, I could barely tell, but okay, it came around this edge and went down there. But I don't need to keep to the same edge. You know, it's a loincloth, there's going to be threads hanging off it, and there's going to be texture, and it's just kind of whatever like motion that your hand makes using a pencil, and the motion that your hand makes doing a brush or pen and ink are going to be different. You have different resistance. It's just a different feel. So I think if you're the one that did the pencils, then that's one thing. You know, if you're sticking to somebody else's inks, that's another thing. But you know, when you're using an HB pencil with 7mm lead and you're using a nib like this, it's just a different experience. So that's why I think sticking to every single line that you made in pencils, it's not only frowned upon, I think it's a mistake, because it can come off as a lot more stiff than if you just let things go a little bit. Hey Marcus, how's it going? Thanks for popping in. I know you use a brush, Marcus. Do you do pen and ink stuff too? I'm not going to draw every blade of grass like Bernie Wrightson would, but we definitely want to show his foot is in the ground, and it's not just laying on like a manicured golf course or something. I did some very stylized clouds, which in this particular scenario I think is completely appropriate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I am kind of outlining them, and then I will do probably horizontal lines for the quote-unquote blue. So the clouds are white, and then everything behind it is going to have a slight value to it. Yeah, we're coming up on an hour, so that was pretty quick. This will take me, I don't know, 3-4 hours at least. So I will do another stream. I don't know. I mean, I could do another one tomorrow. We'll see. It's been so long since I've streamed that, you know, getting a few in over a few days might be fun. Yeah, this smaller nib is actually tearing up the paper a little bit, which is always a possibility. Again, you're dealing with a troll, so you just want to make sure that things are asymmetrical, really. Like, what we consider to be ugly is often just asymmetry. So even for like abs or eyes or things that we just have a natural tendency to make symmetrical, just go out of your way to kind of mess it up. Not mess it up, but don't be so stiff with it. Overall, it'll just have a better look. All right, this pen is getting a little obnoxious, so I might call it a day. But yeah, I might ink tomorrow, so I'll try to at least. Not that it matters, but are you drawing left-handed? I am. Yep. Yeah, I am left-handed. There's not a lot of us out there. It's the only thing I do left-handed, though, which is, I know that's a little strange. I do everything else right-handed, though. Yeah, this nib is a little too small, so I'm gonna call it. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. And yeah, so we have a sort of a fantasy drawing with a knight on top of a troll. Got a big chunk of it done today. I will try to stream tomorrow or some other time, but I'll be working on this, so if you want to kind of check back in and see progress. Any questions, comments, let me know. And one last time, if you're new to me or the channel, I have a comic book called Horace H. Hoover. I write, draw, ink, color, and letter everything. It's available at horacehoover.com. Check it out. It's like an occult detective mystery. Issues 1 through 3 are available. It's a fun book. Check it out. Yeah, thanks everybody for popping into the stream. I really appreciate it. And have a good one. Bye.